I've really, really enjoyed it. But speaking of enjoyment, some seriousness could get a little bit more enjoyment out of their showcase here in the MDI if they're able to take a map off of Echo. It is a huge mountain to climb coming into this, facing the champions, having a rough map 1. But here's where you dig deep and you say, we need some seriousness. And you follow through. They said their name came from something their guild leader said once. Well, now it's time to channel that ambition, that energy, that power to try to take a map off Echo and stay in the series as we get loaded into Atal'dazar here. I was hoping we would get right in the game as I ended that. It would have been so smooth, but
that would have been perfect.
I was so close.
I'm sorry. Production, wow.
We're almost in there.
But the affixes we have in Atal'dazar for the MDI this weekend are actually the same affixes we have on live servers. So you as a viewer, you can actually compare the runs. If you have been running Atal'dazar this week with these affixes, you can compare how fast your runs are with your average pack group and then compare them to Echo and some seriousness. See if you see any similarities. Maybe you could be participating in the MDI yourself.
Yeah, sure.
You could.
My runs look a lot like what we're about to see, I'm sure. Yeah.
Shout out to Raider.io for giving us some stats, because the fastest Atal'dazar on 23 with these affixes thus far sits at 17 minutes 06. And I'm pretty sure we're going to go way below that. So, but maybe the people that did the 17, you know, maybe they're watching this and they're like, hey, maybe we could also be faster.
Honestly, banging out a 17 on live with like no practice, no strategies, like these teams have been going at for a week that's pretty impressive, honestly. Maybe they should be looking into doing MDI.
Yeah, why not? And I mean, that comp, if we look at the live server one, they had a Beastmaster Hunter, they had a Fury Warrior, they had an Unholy Death Knight. So I think it's just a good example of like, when you're playing on live, if you're not playing in the MDI, you can play the class you like, play the spec you like. You don't need to necessarily mirror what you see at the pro level, unless you're really trying to go pro, you know? Play what you like. Right?
No, play what's good.
Come on, back me up.
You can play what you like, but I won't invite you in my group if you're not a meta class.
Right, and nothing is more meta than the spec that you're known for. Right?
I mean, somebody has to even out the Moonkin, right? That's why she needs the meta classes. It's hard, it's just hard to play with one dead DPS, you know?
As a long-term enhancement shaman enjoyer, you know, we had our moment in the sun, I feel like, earlier in this expansion, and we're still good. We're still good. We're still decently high on a lot of the tier lists, but, you know, not going to show up in NBI anytime soon, probably. Sadly. But hey.
Probably not.
Maybe TGP. Play some Aug Evoker. Maybe TGP. Yeah, that's possible.
Maybe. We saw it last time.
Yeah. Well, what else do you think we might see this weekend too? While we're kind of waiting, it sounds like the map need to be remade really quick. Do you think we're going to see a little bit of the augmentation evoker? We've seen it pop up in like the 4 DPS comps from time to time in time trials. People have talked about it. Now that we're here in the top 16, you know, do you think we're going to see it show up at all?
I think it's unlikely to see the augmentation evoker. It is a potential 4th DPS pick if teams do decide to no-heal a dungeon, but like I was talking about, you know, before our first dungeon, I think the premier picks for that 4th DPS slot are probably going to be things like the Ret Paladin or the Feral Druid, classes that can do good damage, but also provide some off-healing for the team, you know, in the absence of a healer. Augmentation, it can work in that slot. It's probably a higher DPS option, especially since you have 3 DPS to augment instead of just the normal 2. But it's a matter of whether or not you need the healing output versus just the mitigation that augmentation brings.
True. Any other opinions? I feel like we haven't seen a Ret Paladin in MDI or TGP, like, probably not since I started hosting it. I'm trying to think of when the last time would be, unless I'm forgetting something. Nagura, do you remember any Ret Paladin? Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the biggest problem for them was always like their target cap, which is the problem for some other classes as well. But they have really strong utility. Maybe the main issue for them is that the other paladin specs were good, right? Because if you have a holy paladin, you don't want to run a red paladin, and holy paladin has been good a lot for MDI and TGP, and prot paladin has been run as well. So maybe that's one of the issues that red paladin has, on top of other things.
No one's gonna run the 3 Paladin comp? Get all the specs in there?
Nope.
Probably not. No.
You saw the druid comp, right? Did
I was gonna say we did see the druid comp once. That's
or 4
true.
druids at
It's
least.
time.
4 druids and a
Here
BM
we
hunter.
go.
True.
That's right. All right, let's go. Some seriousness trying to get back into the thing against Echo. Let's see if they can do it on Atal'dazar.
Right off the bat, differing comps. That rogue is swapped out for a Shadow Priest on the side of Echo, swapped out for a Unholy DK on the side of Some Seriousness. Going into the very first pull, every single trash mob on this left side of the room has been pulled by Echo. I believe Some Seriousness also going for the same pull. You can see that Colossus is now in. Need to make sure to lock this trash down. Any extra casts go off, it's going to be bad for the teams. That mantle goes up, that means no more casts can get interrupted, and they just have to heal through the damage going out on the teams. Looks like the Colossuses are dead, so most of the danger is gone. And both teams are through here. Some Seriousness actually a little bit faster, but with a tiny bit less trash.
Yeah, that's some insane pulls coming in by both of these teams. And Raging making this so much more difficult, right? You have below 30%, you cannot interrupt anything anymore unless you're soothing off the Raging effect, which they can only do with the Rasta Druid on Echo's side. And yeah, you have all of these casters, you have the bubble that it cannot be interrupted anymore, and all of a sudden nothing can be interrupted. But did manage to get through that pull as Echo and Some Seriousness both engaging Priestess Alunsa now, while fighting the rest of the trash in that pack. You can see some of the members also are standing in a location where the charges maybe are not going out from these juggernauts, or they are dodging it as much as they can. And they're also really far away from the gold spawn, from the ad spawn that always spawns on top of the stairs. They are making sure they're CCing it with various different kinds of CCs that they have available. For example, the root from the druid, of course, on Echo's side. And they're just nuking down Priestess Alunsa so quickly. Some Seriousness doing so well, though. Looking at the trash percentage, they're now above Echo in percent. Now, of course, Echo, once they finish off this trash, they're going to be ahead again because they pulled more initially. Yeah, Some Seriousness looking really good in this Atal'dazar so far.
This is actually such an efficient pull, right? Because the boss ends up doing most of the damage to itself every single time it does transfusion. If you have that blood debuff on all 5 of your members, it does 25% of the boss's HP to itself. So, you know, go through 3 cycles, you only have to do 25% of the boss's HP, and you can spend the rest of that time worrying about dealing with the trash they pulled with the boss. And you can see, because of the efficiency of the pull from Echo there, they were able to actually finish off the boss before Some Seriousness did.
Snapping.
Making their way down to Razan, now snapping some swords down here. And they've also pulled that middle trash pack as well, with all of the dinosaurs in it too. This is pretty scary as far as pulls in this dungeon go, but again, with the size of the pulls that they're going for, all of them are scary. They also have some Sky Screamers in there as well, so they have to make sure they don't let a single one of those Screech casts go off. But did they reset the boss?
Very interesting. They did, unfortunately. I don't think that was intended at all by Echo. Unfortunately, resetting the boss here. But yeah, the middle pack, definitely difficult to deal with because of the charge as well. You can see the frenzied charge going through right now. They are pinging it immediately as soon as they see the direction, because if anyone gets stunned, especially if now gets stunned, it can be super dangerous. So that's one of the most difficult things they have to deal with when they snap this on top of the boss. Resan now respawned for Echo. They're immediately pulling it on top. Some Seriousness has the opportunity to catch up to Echo here because of that reset that happened for Echo, but Echo's still ahead in percentage because they pulled that middle pack. And of course, once they finish off those 2 mini bosses from the pack, they're also going to be even further ahead. Some Seriousness, though, also has some trash they can finish off on their side too.
That was definitely, you know, pretty good for Some Seriousness. They might even be a little bit in the lead right now if they're able to, you know, efficiently deal with the rest of this trash. You can see they're a slight bit ahead on boss percentage here. Something I want to point out from the beginning of the dungeon that we really haven't been able to point out just yet because it's been non-stop action since the start of the key. On the very first pull of the dungeon, Echo pre-lusted the pull. They lusted about 10 seconds before they even started gathering the trash together. Now, it's definitely not a fat finger. It's not something Genji does. It very likely means that they have something very close to like a 10-minute 30 dungeon timer in practice, and they need to get that lust on cooldown right away so that they can get it back up as quickly as possible for the second lust later in the dungeon. So that's pretty exciting if they can get this key down to that quick of a time already.
It would be impressive for sure, as Echo not only deals with Resan, all of the rest of the trash is dead. Some Seriousness still has some mobs, 1 mob, actually 2 still left they have to deal with, but also looking good on their side as well. They have to They did drop low a little bit there, but looks like they are fine for now. As Echo did catch up on boss percentage again. Somehow they just found the damage. Now, of course, they are playing a little bit of a different comp, so that is something that you have to consider whenever you are looking at the damage that they can deal. One of the teams maybe having a little bit more AoE, while the other team having a little bit more single target. But yeah, the Unholy DK being so nice for such huge pulls, too.
Yeah, I mean, things like the Shadow Priest Fire Mage combination, getting you a lot of just free cleave while you're doing your single target's pretty nice. That's a really interesting gateway from the Warlock. I don't think I've ever used that gateway before to get back up to this middle platform from Razan's platform. Gonna have to incorporate that into my playbook for later on. But into the next trash pull here, 2 packs of swords, plus their Skyscreamers being pulled into the Shield Bashers here as well. And I didn't see, did they get the rogues in as well from the
we got a fear go off for some seriousness. It looks like that might be a full wipe.
No.
Double fear went off from the Sky Screamers. Their tank does go down. It looks like it's a full wipe. So unfortunate for them, as they did do the same gateway skip back up the platform as Echo did. But as they were gathering up all of these Sky Screamers into the next pull, they just had a fear go off. And obviously with the fear going through, the tank not being able to use mitigation, just dying to that trash. And then it just domino affects the rest of the players too. So unfortunate. It was so close up until this point. But then that one interaction is not going through.
Echo to Fear go off too. Cauterize comes out from Gingy, but it looks like they were able to live through it just barely here. They're going to be fine as most of the dangerous trash was dead. The swords jumping around while being feared is definitely something that'll lead to your wipe there. There were only a couple of mobs left for Echo there when that fear went off, so they're able to live through it. But, you know, a couple of mistakes coming out from Echo in this key shows that they can bleed here, but their trash is almost all the way done here. 98%. All they have to do is deal with one final trash mob here. Maybe like an extra Skyscreamer at the end of the dungeon will get them where they need to be. On to Volcall here, though, and it's just even cleave here, making sure you're cleaving down these totems as evenly as possible so you can get to the second phase.
Yeah, and with the percentage they're up to, they're just going to do boss into boss now. The last percent they're probably going to get from a Skyscreamer, they can drag up to the last boss, to Yasma. So just basically bosses they have to deal with. It's tyrannical, so they still have to worry about those bosses, but not too much danger coming up. Except Yasma, that is some boss you can always wipe to. And that definitely happens in my pack groups all of the time. Which is unfortunate, because it's always at the very end that you wipe and deplete the key in. But yeah, there we go. As some seriousness now is also engaging the boss, making sure they are cleaving those reanimated totems down simultaneously, evenly. And of course, in phase 2, you want to make sure you're not getting hit by any of these puddles ticks, because otherwise you're very likely going to die on top of the rest of the AoE damage that this boss does in this phase.
Yeah, and also some seriousness is down a little bit of extra trash count as well. I'm not sure what they missed along the way, but they'll have to make that up at some point, which just sets them even further behind than they are. You know, being 50% behind on a tyrannical boss is already pretty ridiculous, but yeah, they're going to have to find some extra trash along the way towards Yasma at the end of the dungeon here. Echo's still chipping away at Volcall here. The room is starting to fill up with that slime that he spits out every now and again, but as long as they do a good job of placing it, they'll be totally fine. And you can see the middle of the room is starting to clear up again, so even if this were to go on for a little bit longer, they would still have plenty of room to finish it off. It's going to be quick kill for Echo here in the next 10 seconds or so. Now, they're going to run towards Yasma here. I think it is just a Skyscraper that they have left for their trash count, though.
Yeah, I think so as well. They will be skipping that trash again with that Imprison very nicely by now here on the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Imprison, of course, being a true CC, which means that if you CC him up with Imprison and you walk past it, you're not getting encumbered with it. Unlike something like Sheep or Hibernate or Shackle, those will get you encumbered anyway. But Imprison and also Sap from a Rogue will not get you encumbered. That's what they use to get past. And now the most dangerous part, the spiders on the stairs. Kill so many people every day.
Yep, of course, neither of our teams is going to have a death to it. That would be silly, especially at this level of competition. So we don't need to cover it too much, because that would just be jinxing it. Here we go, on to Yasma here. Let's see what the strategy is for dealing with these ads here. Now, they're dropping them pretty close to the boss here, but as long as they have sigils for it, they're never going to get anywhere close to the boss, and they can very quickly deal with them with their AoE damage. That Skyscreamer now coming in as well. It's just going to be an extra kick for them to deal with. Actually, they have 2 of them. I don't think they needed 2 of them, but they've got 2 of them nonetheless here. Maybe it's just extra funnel for the boss damage here, which is, you know, actually something they get a lot out of for their team, so not bad at all. just have to do a two target kick rotation, which is actually pretty annoying with 3 casters in your group.
Yeah, that's another thing to mention as well about the interrupts, right? Because full caster groups are actually not something that is super common for the MDI, especially because when you pull so big, you need so much control. You need so many interrupts, so many AoE stuns, so many AoE interrupts, and usually melee classes have more of those AoE interrupts on top of also having a shorter normal interrupt. But there we go, the Bloodlust is coming up for Echo, as we talked about earlier. Jinji using that Bloodlust so early made it possible for them to use Bloodlust again at the very end. Because they're just now 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the dungeon and Yasma is about to go down. This is such a fast run by Echo.
Yeah, I mean, this is good timing for this run, right? The Infernal came up just as the Lust came up with the Power Infusion for maximum single-target blast. It actually makes me wonder, if they hadn't reset Razan, would the Lust actually have come up here at all? Maybe like at the last 10%. I mean, still, all things said and done, this is a fantastic run from Echo. Some Seriousness played a lot better in this key, keeping it close the entire time, but it just isn't enough to compete with Echo, as they are going to be taking our first series of the day, 2-0.
That's right. The once and possibly once again future champs Echo managed to grab the 2-0 against Some Seriousness. You were right. It was a much cleaner run this time around. I think they were sitting at about 5 deaths at the end there, which is a strong showing. But man, Echo again just dominating these keys coming in. And you know what? I mean, you just use the Bloodlust at the start, and then if you need it again down the road, fine. If it's there, fine. If it's not, fine. You're getting it done in sub like 10:30 anyway. So what does it matter?